De l'ordre du jour, j'ai le plaisir de donner la parole à Madame Rosemary DiCarlo.
Thank you, Madam President. In the 8 days since the Secretary General last briefed you on Lebanon and the Middle East, the situation in Lebanon has become even more alarming. The exchanges of fire between Hizbullah and the Israel Defense Forces, which commenced on 8 October last year when Hizbullah fired on Israeli targets in stated support for Gaza, have intensified dramatically. Hizbullah has stepped up its attacks on Israel, firing rockets, missiles, and drones further south, including towards Haifa and Tel Aviv. Israel responded with attacks now across Lebanon, including in the capital Beirut, striking hundreds of Hizbullah targets, many in densely populated areas, and causing widespread destruction, displacement, and suffering. Since the commencement of Israeli ground operations into Lebanon on 1 October, Hizbullah and the Israel Defense Forces have been engaged in intensified clashes in southern Lebanon. The ongoing exchanges of fire has created a humanitarian emergency. The number of dead and wounded has spiraled. Over 300 people have been killed in Lebanon in just the past week. Since 8 October last year, the number of dead is now over 2,000, according to Lebanese Ministry of Health. Hundreds of those killed were civilians, including more than 100 children. Lebanese Armed Forces personnel have been killed, with 3 fatalities in the past week. Israeli soldiers have also been killed, including at least 12 on Lebanese territory since 1 October. Over 600 people have been displaced in Lebanon, 250,000 people since last Wednesday. The vast majority are women and children. A quarter of Lebanese territory has been placed under so-called evacuation orders issued by the Israel Defense Forces, affecting more than 100 villages and neighborhoods, with the IDF giving people as little as 2 hours' notice to vacate their homes, often in the middle of the night. Around 250,000 people, including Lebanese and Syrians, have fled into Syria. Tens of thousands more have departed through Beirut airport. Lebanon's health sector is under immense pressure. Many hospitals and centers closed following airstrikes hitting healthcare facilities and personnel. The flash appeal launched last week requests $425 million to assist 1 million people over the next 3 months. I urge member states to support this request, and I thank those of you who have already given or pledged aid. In northern Israel, the civilian population is also enduring repeated attacks from Hizbullah and other non-state armed groups in Lebanon and the region. Over 50 people have been killed and more than 60,000 have been displaced in Israel and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights since last October, disrupting lives and livelihoods. The devastating conflict in Lebanon, coupled with intensified strikes in Syria and the raging violence in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, points to a region dangerously teetering on the brink of an all-out war. Madam President, our collective inability to stop the violence and stem the bloodshed is damning. Hizbullah and other non-state armed groups must stop firing rockets and missiles into Israel. We urge Israel to stop its bombardment of Lebanon and to withdraw its ground forces. The parties should seize the diplomatic options put on the table before them, not the weapons by their side. The United Nations welcomes the continued efforts of member states in this regard. As the Secretary General has warned, there is still time, but it is quickly running out. We must give diplomacy a chance now. The Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Hesed-Pleshart, is engaging with all actors to stress the need for immediate de-escalation and a diplomatic solution. The parties must commit to a return to a cessation of hostilities and the full implementation of Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701. The Lebanese state must have control over all weapons within its territory. We have seen what happens when it does not. The political impasse in Lebanon is approaching 2 years. At this time of crisis, I urge Lebanon's political leaders to take resolute steps towards addressing the vacuum. The state sovereignty and territorial integrity of both Lebanon and Israel must be respected. Obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, must be upheld. In this regard, distinction must be made between civilians and fighters, and between civilian infrastructure and military objectives. Civilians and civilian infrastructure must not be targeted. Indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks must be avoided. Humanitarian personnel, medical workers, and journalists also must not be targeted. UN personnel, including the brave peacekeepers along the Blue Line and members of the UN family working under such dangerous conditions across Lebanon, must be protected. We need to invest every effort to reverse this cycle of violence and bring Lebanon and Israel and the region back from the brink of catastrophe. Thank you, Madam President.